Good morning, and thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Congratulations, actually, for the conference organizer. It's amazing. I saw the list of participants. Obviously, going to be 2 days of exciting learning and sharing opportunity for everyone. As mentioned, I work for an organization called Calgary Catholic Immigration Society in Calgary in southern Alberta. I'm here to tell the story of how we got engaged with the smaller centers in southern Alberta, and hopefully that will generate some discussion, and I'm sure there are fantastic work being done in other parts of the country. I talk about the organization I work for because, again, as you can see, that was actually the lead organization that initiated the whole approach in talking to these smaller communities in an area of about 150 kilometers around Calgary. And there was a reason, and I will explain why. I have to make sure this works first, and it does work. Thank you. Again, for some of you who've been attending the Metropolis Conference or other research conference, we always talked about really the pain that immigration to Canada was facing, that everybody would go to 3 major cities, Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. And everybody was looking for a strategy to change that trend. The same scenario was happening in the provinces. In the case of Alberta, 95% of people coming to Alberta obviously were attracted to Calgary and Edmonton. So there were a lot of discussion as how we can change that trend, because we knew that actually smaller centers do require people to go to, but unfortunately there were no plan, there were no really communication. But something changed drastically, and that was the introduction of the TFW. Whether we love it or hate it, at least the impact was that we started having a lot of newcomers. TFW starting with, they would start going to the smaller centers. And obviously, the need was there, the employers were looking for them, the businesses were dying because they could not sustain the labor needs that they had, they could not import it, they could not retain it. So the TFW actually was a blessing for some of the communities, including a community in southern Alberta. So the numbers start actually growing. And also we had some huge number of large employers actually in those areas, that they were bringing people, and they were people actually being shipped back and forward from Calgary. They needed the people, but they were not really keen in investing, creating a community that actually can retain and accommodate those people. But there was a lot of commuting going back and forward to Calgary from to those communities, and they met their needs somehow. But I think the realization started coming about 10 years ago. They looked at themselves, they felt, oh, it's not looking good, they better do something. So obviously why we got involved is the reason that actually I stated that the increased numbers, the numbers start going quite high. The cities start looking at themselves, and they could not believe how diverse they are, actually. That's why they actually tried to look for an organization that would facilitate that study for them, that Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. We have been actually part of the community for past over 30 years, although we primarily operated in Calgary, but the object of the organization, 1980, when they introduced that, was really southern Alberta, but focusing in Calgary. So there was a lot of relationship. We are one of the master agreement holders for sponsoring refugees. In that respect, we had actually a very intimate relationship with some aspect of the communities in smaller centers, because we did all the sponsorship that they did, and we had programs to encourage them to do more sponsorship. So I think that gave us some background to understand and the trust that the community really required for agency to have before engaging the community. So the story started when actually the request came from the High River. There's a community about 100 kilometers away from Calgary in a foothill area, which is quite a dynamic area. There's a lot of farming community, a lot of small industry there. So they came to us and say they really want to know what's going on, because obviously the face of the city is changing, the town is changing, the school experiencing a lot of new challenges, the health. So again, we initiated a study there. That was about 8-9 years ago. Obviously, there was not a discussion of a government initiative at that time. So we went there, we brought the community together, we some capacity, obviously, and some engaged the entire community, and then at the end of the day, we brought everybody together, the United Way school system, the health, the labor, a lot of employers' interest actually. That was quite interesting that they were actually there to help us to make it happen, because again, in the case of this particular area, we have a Cargill food there that with about 1,000 immigrants working for them, so obviously they were very keen, and they actually did a lot of investment, good credit to them as well, actually. So the study was done, we introduced it to the community, they were surprised. First of all, as how diverse they were. They did not know how diverse they are. And when they looked at the trends in the 5 years prior to this study, they actually got the message that they have to do something about it. So the idea was make sure that they stay there, because they stay there, they needed to have a better community, better facility, the school, and the health and the housing. So I think the community, the town actually took it very seriously, and again, supported by the employers. Actually, 2 or 3 particular employers, they really wanted to work, and they made it work. So they brought in some resources, and from there we started that. So it was, once the study finished, they realized that they need some sort of services. They needed help with the school to understand where these kids are coming from, what are the best practices, and there were a lot of good practices, obviously 100 kilometers away in Calgary, that we could actually transfer that, so did not have to invent the wheels again. So I think in 2007, we felt that there should be services in that area. We approached CIC at the time, although it was not a priority for them, with our insistence and not taking for answers, going back and forth. It wasn't easy. It wasn't really just going to them and say, listen, there are people there, fund it, put the resources there. It took us about 6 months to convince them it was a good idea. Now, after 8 years, obviously, everybody knows it was a good idea. So, again, they supported the program. That's how we started that. And then, obviously, the program started because we have another huge community called Community of Brooks, which again, you know that is a meatpacking company there with 3,000, over 4,000 actually, workers, that most of them are immigrants. So obviously we were welcome there. We asked to look at things there, and then as a result, after some deliberation, some community partnership, we started and we created a program that is called BCIS, Brooks and Noel County Immigration Services. Part of that, we, again, although these are the project of a main organization called Calgary Catholic Immigration Society, obviously we cater the approach in every community. Although the community may look the same, but they are quite different. So we had to actually have a different approach, different really partners at the table, different way of really consulting, and really catering something that works for the community. And the idea was, this is what you need, and then find somebody to do it, or you create it yourself. And I think the response was it was too expensive, they don't have the capacity, and they wanted the Calgary Catholic Immigration Society to actually facilitate that for them. And since then, now we have actually in the community of Okotoks, the same process we went through, and again, a study was done, and we did also the town of Chestermere that also is close to Calgary, was quite diverse, then the same process. So the process is very simple. We do a study. We bring everybody together so they understand who they have become, and also try to demonstrate what in the next 5 years they're going to look like. And when you do that, then I don't think the support will be a problem. Everybody will get it, and they're very committed to helping you. So as a result, now we have a number of communities, the High River, I mentioned, Okotoks, and Chestermere, Airdrie, Cochrane, Strathmore, and there are others that we are working with. But the interesting part is that there are readiness for the different institution in a different level. So schools are the one actually they cry first. They have really, they feel it the next day. They go to school, they see the diversity in the classrooms. Give you one example actually, the Cargill, they brought in about 600 TFW, 300 of them landed, all good news. The wife joined join them. Then the family started going to school. The school did not have enough space, enough teachers, so everything came back to look at to say, if they want to really land 300 people, that may translate to about 500 new students, they better have capacity school. They better have the teachers that at least they understand some sort of teaching the diverse population. So those are the things that comes together, but it's a shock to the community because they don't understand. When you celebrate the landing of 300 TFW in a town of about 18,000 people, the amount of pressure is going to be on the health is amazing. So nobody talks about those things. Nobody looks at those things. We always look at it, become a little more reactive than being proactive. So some of the experience that I share, and again, there are a number of studies, the report is there, I can make it available for you, and hopefully that at least what we learn, and we learn from others, that could be shared, and we all do a better job. For the future, actually, what we have done, again, we take that job very seriously. I think the community is quite excited. They know that they have to create a welcoming community. They're actually very committed. Being in this business for 7 years and working with those communities, there's a huge changes. We have a golden opportunity, actually. I'm sure if it's happening in Southern Alberta, it must be happening in other parts of the country. So I don't think as a practitioner, as an academic, as a funder, as a government policymakers, we can miss this opportunity. They are waiting for us to go there to cater something that works for them, and that is the key. We can't go and say, this is our policy, get into it in the way that we want. We have to go there and have those tea ceremony with them, sit there and talk. There are a lot of small community culture sensitivity, I would call it, which is different than a city of 1 million or 2 million. So I think we have to pay attention to that if we want to be successful. We are actually, the first draft, I was leaving the office, I got that. We are actually doing a 5 years engagement with community engagement and settlement integration services for 2015-2020. Again, this has been done with about 8 different small communities, Drumhellers, Okotoks, or Banff, not Banff actually. It was interesting, we started with the town of Banff, actually FCSS as a partnership. Now we have a partnership in providing the TFW program, but they have taken on their own and expanded that to more settlement services, which is again another good model to look at because the city itself did take leadership to actually provide some more services. Very quickly, again, there are many opportunities out there. Obviously, as you can see, as I mentioned, people are ready, they understand it, they're committed, and we cannot really miss that opportunity. 10 years ago, I tried to few things that didn't work because they were not really there yet. Today, when we suggest something, they definitely are supportive and they want to do that. So these are some of the opportunities that I listed there, that they do understand that also settlement is not just administrative work. They understand fully that is expertise, and when you have an organization that has a range of services that can be transferred to that community, they are welcoming it and they are appreciating as well. And also, they understand that also the concept of welcoming community. People will stay if they feel good about themselves. If they don't feel good about themselves, they just pack and leave. And I think that has been settled in those communities. There are challenges. We don't really have an overall vision. We know it's important, but we have not got really, it makes it difficult for us as a practitioner because we have to also advocate on something which is already should be accepted, should be well within our policy, and we should just do the work. So that advocacy piece is still something we do to convince the funder it's a good idea to go there and invest money there. Again, it's a dynamic, it's different, it's a large community, large area, people are scattered all over, so we have to come up with some creative way of doing work, like online working or mobile settlement services that obviously they are there. And the challenges, obviously, is health, education, and housing, which is, I think, common across the country. Again, relationship is extremely important. I think you can't just walk in the smaller community and say, we know better than you do, and this is how you do it. You take time. Even if you do, you have to let them to come back and tell you that you know better, and they ask you to do the work for them. Once that happens, obviously, it would work. Again, capacity is important. I think they are looking at us as an expertise, so we definitely have to produce something that they could use it and they could benefit. And again, Calgary Catholic Immigration Society that I work for is obviously an organization that has good capacity to provide services for them. Forward looking, I think the trend is going to stay there. We should not let it die. Actually, we should encourage it, because that was a question why people are not going to smaller communities. Now they are going to smaller communities. So I think the question is what the practitioners, the academia, as well as the policymakers are going to do to make sure it becomes a success story, not a bad story. And again, this whole notion of community engagement is there. So we know that. We didn't have it before. They're paying attention. And obviously, we need to have very clearly allocated resources and learn and not to invent the wheels, because there should be more conversation on this particular topic, because I'm sure every province are going through the same experience. And this is the organization, again, as I work for. And if there's any question, I can be available at the end of the presentation. Thank you.